the end of the road. I moved into a friend's place after fleeing that house. My friend Jake didn't ask many questions. He just noticed I looked like hell, pale, sleep-deprived, and nervous. For the first few nights, I actually slept well. It felt safe. But then, things started again. It began with dreams, or what I thought were dreams. I'd see that little girl in my sleep, standing at the end of a hallway that never seemed to end. She would just stand there, staring. No movement, no blinking, just silence. And every time I tried to speak or move toward her, I'd wake up gasping. Then one morning, Jake mentioned something strange. He said he heard footsteps in the hallway outside his room during the night. Light, quick footsteps, like a child running back and forth. He thought maybe one of our neighbors had a kid, but we lived on the top floor of a building, no families, no kids. That same night, the knocking returned. I recognized it immediately. 3 knocks, pause, 3 more. But this time, it was on Jake's bedroom wall. We searched the apartment. Nothing. Then I saw it on the hallway mirror. That same handprint, small, perfectly placed. I didn't even bother wiping it this time. I started to suspect I hadn't just left the house behind. Something followed me. That pushed me to dig deeper. I returned to the town during the day and visited the local library. I asked the old librarian about the Mason family, and she reluctantly pulled out a thin folder from the town's newspaper archives. Inside were yellowed clippings and black and white photos. One headline read, "Family vanishes without a trace. Town in shock." The article explained how neighbors reported hearing screaming late one night, but no one dared check. The next morning, the house was silent. Police found the doors locked from the inside. Dinner plates were still on the table, the little girl's toys scattered across the floor, but no sign of the family. Not even fingerprints. Not even the girls. What struck me most was the final paragraph. Police noted a strange symbol carved into the wood above the fireplace. The origin remains unknown. I felt my stomach drop. That symbol, I had seen it. During my second week in the house, I remembered noticing a strange carving above the fireplace. I thought it was just decorative, a swirl-like shape surrounded by jagged lines. I snapped a photo of it before I left. I still had it in my phone. I showed it to the librarian. Her face turned pale. She told me to leave. I pushed for answers. Eventually, she admitted the symbol had appeared in local legends. Some said it was a marker, a calling sign for restless spirits, a binding mark meant to trap souls within a space. Meaning, the house wasn't just haunted, it was a prison. I returned home shaken, but things weren't done with me. That night, Jake wasn't home. I sat in the living room, researching haunted objects and spirit attachments. That's when the power cut out. In total darkness, I heard it again, the dragging sound. Not upstairs this time, but in the hallway. Right outside my room, I held my breath, and then the door handle turned. Slowly, the door creaked open on its own, revealing that same child, but now she was closer. Her face, more decayed, eyes darker, her mouth opened, and instead of words, a loud static-like noise poured out, like 100 whispers playing all at once. I screamed, and everything went black. I woke up on the floor hours later. Jake found me shaking, with scratches on my arms and a broken mirror behind me. That was the last straw. I contacted a spiritual researcher, a woman who dealt with attachments. I sent her the photo of the symbol, explained the story. After a long silence, she said something that's still stuck in my head. That house didn't choose you by accident. It needs someone to carry its presence. You walked in alone, and you walked out with it. I moved to another state, changed my number, got rid of all my belongings from that house. But sometimes, even now, I wake up at 3:17 a.m., and I hear soft knocking from the walls. If you liked that first story, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe. I'm new to this channel, and this is my first time trying something like this. Your support would mean the world to me. The attic door that never closed. After my grandmother passed away, I inherited her old countryside home. a place I hadn't visited since I was 8. I remembered the scent of cinnamon tea and old books, the creaky wooden floors, and most of all, the attic door that never fully shut. It was always slightly ajar, no matter how hard anyone pushed it closed. I once asked Grandma why, and she had just smiled and said, "Some doors aren't meant to be shut, darling." Back then, I didn't understand what she meant, but I would. Moving in, I arrived in late autumn. The sky was gray and heavy, the air crisp with that strange, silent tension the countryside always seemed to carry. The house was preserved exactly as she had left it. Her rocking chair still faced the fireplace. Dust floated like snow in the slanting light. And yes, the attic door was still cracked open. That night, I dreamed of her. She stood at the foot of my bed, expression unreadable. Her mouth moved, but I couldn't hear anything. Then her eyes rolled back, and she lifted a bony finger toward the ceiling, toward the attic. I woke up drenched in sweat. The first signs. Over the next week, I noticed things. Whispers, always from above, sometimes soft weeping, other times frantic murmuring like someone praying or reciting something. I thought maybe animals had gotten into the attic, but every time I climbed up the narrow stairs, flashlight in hand, nothing. Just old furniture, boxes, and that heavy, musty air. The attic door would creak open on its own, even when I tried to wedge it shut. One evening, I found something tucked beneath the attic stairs, a child's shoe, old, leather cracked, the inside stuffed with yellowed paper. There were no children in the house. That night, the weeping grew louder, and this time, I heard my name, whispered from behind the attic door. I dug deeper and eventually found a hidden compartment in the bookshelf. Inside was a small, leather-bound journal. It belonged to my grandmother. Most of the entries were mundane, gardening notes, recipes, but the last few pages were different, sloppy, panicked. He still lives in the attic. I can hear him at night. I should never have let that ritual happen, but I was young, foolish. The door must never be sealed. That's how we trap him. If it closes, he walks free. I reread those words over and over. Who was he, and what ritual? Breaking the rule. 2 nights later, a storm hit. The wind howled and the attic door slammed open and shut repeatedly. Fed up, I climbed up and shut it tight, jamming a chair under the knob to keep it closed. The silence that followed was immediate and unnatural. For a moment, I felt victorious until the lights flickered, the air grew thick, and I heard footsteps, but not from the attic. From the basement. I froze. Something had changed. Shh, the entity. From that night on, things escalated. Dark figures moved through mirrors. The fireplace would roar to life on its own. And always. That sound, like something breathing too close to my ear when I slept. One night, I found muddy footprints leading from the basement to my bedroom. The smell of rotting earth lingered for hours. I contacted a local historian, desperate for answers. She came over the next day, listened to the journal, and turned pale. There was a cult, she whispered, back in the 1930s. They used this house as a binding ground. The attic wasn't to keep something out, it was to keep something in. I had released it, the final attempt. We performed a cleansing ritual, but the house rejected it. Windows shattered, walls bled, and in the middle of it all, the attic door burst open, even though we had never touched it. From the shadows, something emerged, tall, twisted, human, but not quite. It spoke in my grandmother's voice. "You let me out." I ran. That was 6 months ago. Epilogue. The house stands empty now, the windows boarded, the attic door still open. But sometimes, late at night, people walking past the property say they see a light in the upper window. And if they listen closely, they swear they hear someone whispering, "Shut the door. Please, shut the door." The phone that rang after midnight. When I moved into my new apartment last winter, I was just trying to escape. From what, I wasn't even sure anymore. Maybe the weight of grief, maybe my own mind. The place was cheap, just 1 bedroom, 3rd floor, old building, creaky floors, radiators that never worked right. but it was quiet, and that's all I needed, or so I thought. The first ring. It started on the fourth night. I was lying in bed around 12:30 a.m. when the landline rang. Yes, landline. The place came with one built into the wall in the hallway. I'd never plugged it in, but somehow it rang. A shrill, old-fashioned tone. Confused, I answered it. Static. Then a faint whisper. "You're not alone." I froze. The line went dead. I tried to convince myself it was a prank. Maybe the wiring was old or someone was messing with me. I unplugged the phone completely. But the next night, it rang again, still unplugged. Voices in the hallway. After the third call, things got worse. I began hearing footsteps in the hallway, outside my apartment, then just inside the door. Late at night, the light beneath the door would flicker, like someone was walking past again and again. One night, I heard breathing. Not mine. It was coming from the living room, slow and shallow, like someone trying not to be heard. When I went to check, nothing, but the window was open. I never opened it, and the landline, still unplugged, had its receiver off the hook. The recordings. I bought a cheap voice recorder and left it running in the hallway overnight. The next morning, I played it back. There was silence for hours. Then at exactly 12:47 a.m., the sound of the phone ringing, followed by a voice I didn't recognize. "He's watching, don't turn around." Then, a laugh. A child's laugh, broken and distant but unmistakable. I moved out of that apartment that day. But the story doesn't end there. The motel I checked into a small roadside motel for a week, just until I could figure out what to do next. It was quiet, clean, and, most importantly, no landline. The first night, I finally slept peacefully, until 12:47 a.m. My cell phone rang. No number, just unknown caller. When I picked up, the same static, then the same whisper. "You left." But I didn't. I dropped the phone, looked around. The motel room mirror had fogged over, and in the condensation, a single word appeared. "Behind." I turned around. Nothing, but I didn't sleep again. The truth behind the line, I returned to the apartment building the next day, not to stay, just to ask questions. The landlord, a tired man in his 60s, went pale when I mentioned the phone. "You were in 3B?" he asked. I nodded. "That apartment's been empty for 12 years. The last tenant died there. Heart attack. They found him clutching the phone. Said it wouldn't stop ringing." I asked if anyone else had stayed there since. No one lasted more than a week. I asked why he still rented it out. He just shrugged. Some people don't believe in that kind of thing until they do. It's been 3 months. I moved across the state, changed numbers, got a new phone, but every so often, not every night, just enough to keep me unsettled, I wake up at 12:47 a.m. and my phone lights up. Unknown caller. I never answer it, but sometimes I can still hear the phone ringing in my dreams. She watched me through the window. I had just moved to a small town in Maine for a teaching job. The place I rented was a cozy little house near the woods, cheap, quiet, and far from the city. It was exactly what I thought I needed: peace. The house had massive floor-to-ceiling windows. During the day, sunlight poured in and gave the illusion of openness and warmth. But at night, those windows became something else entirely, like mirrors but black, reflecting nothing, and yet somehow always watching. The first time I saw her, it started about 2 weeks after I moved in. One night while grading papers, I looked up and noticed a figure outside, motionless in the dark. I thought it was my reflection at first, but then I realized it wasn't in the window. It was outside. A woman, thin, pale, wearing a tattered white nightgown, long dark hair covering most of her face. She didn't move. She didn't blink. And the moment I stood up, she vanished. I spent the rest of the night checking locks, peeking through curtains, walking from room to room with a kitchen knife, but there was nothing, no sign of anyone. The footprints. The next morning, I found barefoot footprints on the back porch, small, muddy, leading to the window, not away. I took photos, called the landlord. He said it was probably kids messing around, but no kids lived nearby, just trees, just woods. That night, I heard it for the first time. Tap, tap, 3 gentle taps on the living room window. I rushed over, nothing. I turned off all the lights, sat in the dark with my phone camera ready, staring out the window. Nothing came back, no face, no movement, just blackness. The taps continued. Every night after that, the taps continued. Same time, 3:12 m. Sometimes one window, sometimes multiple. Kitchen, bathroom, bedroom. Once I thought I saw her shadow move from one window to the next. Then came the messages. One morning, I woke up and saw the bathroom mirror fogged from the shower I hadn't taken yet. In the center, someone had written, "Let me in." I didn't even shower that day. I left the house and spent the day in my car, driving around aimlessly. The phone calls. That night, I unplugged my Wi-Fi, my phone, everything. But around 3:15 a.m., my phone turned on, by itself. The screen lit up with an unknown caller. I didn't answer it, but the voicemail it left, I can still hear it in my mind. A child's voice. "She's outside. You locked her out. Now she's mad." I nearly threw my phone across the room. The police visit. I contacted the police the next morning. A kind officer named Harper came over. He listened. He didn't laugh. In fact, when I described the woman, he got very quiet. He asked if I knew the history of the house. I said no. He told me about the woman who used to live there, a widow named Eleanor, who lost her daughter in the woods behind the property. The little girl had vanished without a trace. The mother went mad, refusing to leave the house, saying the child was still out there, still watching. Then one night, Eleanor walked into the woods and never came back. They found her nightgown hanging from a tree branch, but no body. The night everything broke. The next night, I set up cameras. I even tried sleeping in the closet to avoid the windows. But the moment the clock hit 3:12 a.m., every camera turned off. Every window tapped at the same time. Tap, tap, tap. And then I heard footsteps. Inside, I froze. The hallway light turned on by itself. I slowly stepped out and saw her, not outside. Standing in the kitchen, her head twitching slightly, her hands limp at her sides, that wet hair covering her face, and those eyes, completely black. She pointed at me. Then she spoke in my own voice. I said, "Let me in." Aftermath. I don't remember much after that. I woke up the next morning on my front lawn, shaking, bleeding from a cut on my palm. The front door was open, the windows were all cracked, and written on every mirror in the house, the same message repeated, "I'm inside now." Epilogue. I moved out the next day, burned most of my belongings. I don't use windows in my home anymore. I cover them all with black sheets. But some nights, around 3:12 a.m., I hear tapping. Not from outside, from behind the mirror. I never believed in ghosts or the supernatural. Not really. I believed in stress, in sleep deprivation, in overthinking. But what happened in that apartment, what followed me from there, shattered every piece of logic I clung to. It started when I moved to a small New England town for work. I needed something cheap and temporary. That's how I ended up above Whitaker's Antiques, a crumbling old store that looked like it hadn't had a customer since the 70s. The owner, Mr. Whitaker, was an elderly man who barely spoke, just nodded when I handed over the deposit. The apartment was dusty, cold, and dimly lit, but affordable. I moved in with nothing but a suitcase, my laptop, and a mattress. For the first 2 days, nothing seemed wrong. Night 3 is when I heard the first whisper. It was faint, like wind, but it came from beneath the floor, directly below my bed. It only lasted a few seconds. I paused my movie, listened, and heard nothing more. I convinced myself it was old plumbing or mice. But the next night, the whisper came again. Only this time, it was clearer. A girl's voice, whispering so softly I couldn't make out the words, but the tone, it chilled me. I started sleeping with socks on and my feet curled up, afraid to touch the floor. I told Mr. Whitaker. He just looked at me with clouded eyes and muttered, "Don't scratch at what's buried, it wants out." That night, I couldn't sleep. At exactly 2:46 a.m., I heard knocking from beneath the floorboards. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. I froze. A few nights later, I found the loose floorboard near the closet. Beneath it, I uncovered a dust-covered wooden box with an old cassette tape, a tarnished bracelet, and something that looked like a child's drawing, stick figures, and a black scribble towering over them. I borrowed a tape player from a thrift shop nearby. When I played it, static hissed at first. Then a little girl's voice whispered, "He lives under the wood. Don't talk to him. Don't hear him. Don't let him out." And then came a horrible sound, a man's scream cut short, then silence. That night, things escalated. I heard footsteps, not mine, pacing the wooden floor around my bed. Soft, deliberate, I couldn't breathe. I kept my eyes shut until morning. I stayed at a motel the next night, but I returned. I had to get my laptop and paperwork. When I entered, the place smelled like old earth, like a freshly dug grave. I noticed something scrawled in red across the bedroom wall. "You heard him." I grabbed my things and turned to leave, but I swear I felt a breath on my neck. Cold, shaking. I ran down the stairs, and that's when I saw Mr. Whitaker, just standing at the bottom. He looked straight at me and said, "You opened it. Now it's awake." I left the town that night. Weeks passed. I tried to forget. But then I noticed something strange. In my new apartment, one far from that town, I started waking up at 2:46 a.m. again, and the floors creaked, even though I lived in a carpeted unit. Then the whispers returned. I called a paranormal researcher, someone who dealt with haunted objects. I told her everything, the apartment, the tape, the bracelet. I even emailed her the photo I took of the scrawled message on the wall. She went silent for a moment, then said, "Whatever that voice was, it latched on to you. The whisper wasn't just a warning, it was an invitation." She told me to destroy the tape, the bracelet, anything I still had from that apartment. I did, but last night I was laying in bed when I heard a soft knock beneath me. I live in a third-floor condo now. No basement, no crawl space, just knock, 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 and then a whisper, "You can't bury me forever." When I moved into that cheap rental unit, I should have known something was off. The landlord, Mr. Carson, seemed too eager. He barely looked me in the eyes when handing me the keys. "First month free," he said, forcing a smile. "Just one thing, don't touch the red door. It's just storage, nothing for tenants to worry about." Red door? That caught my attention, but I was broke and tired. I nodded and signed the lease without a second thought. The apartment, Unit 3C, was old. The walls creaked when I walked. The ceiling fan made an eerie whirring noise like breathing. But worst of all was the red door, right next to the bathroom. It was about 4 feet tall, painted blood red with black edges. Heavy bolts sealed it shut. It didn't match anything in the apartment. And then the knocking began. Night one. I was scrolling my phone around 2:44 a.m. when I heard it. A pause. It wasn't loud, just deliberate, measured. I assumed it was the front door, but when I checked, nothing. Then I turned and saw the red door, a soft vibration coming from behind it, like someone was knocking on it from the inside. I laughed it off. Old buildings make weird noises, right? Night 3. That's when the whispers began. I was brushing my teeth when I heard a girl's voice behind the red door. Just a few words muffled. "Let me out, I won't hurt you." I stepped back, heart pounding. I put my ear to the door. Silence. I decided to record audio overnight. The next morning, I played it back. At exactly 2:44 a.m., the voice returned, louder this time. "He locks us in here. He feeds us fear." I deleted the recording. Night 5, I confronted Mr. Carson. He went pale when I asked, "That door's been sealed since the 90s. No one's ever opened it. Don't try. I mean it." He refused to say more. That night, I woke up to something standing at the foot of my bed. My lights were off, the room freezing, my closet door wide open. I couldn't move. Sleep paralysis? No. It was worse. The figure leaned closer and whispered in my ear, "You heard me now." Night 7. I taped the red door shut, blocked it with furniture. At 2:44 a.m., everything in the apartment went silent. Then the door began slamming, not knocking, slamming like something enraged behind it. The tape ripped off. My dresser shook violently and slid across the floor as if pushed. And then it stopped. In the morning, I found something new. A child's handprint. In ash. On the bathroom mirror. I tried to leave. I packed my bags. I made it as far as the hallway before all the lights in the building shut off. My phone died at 74%. Something moved in the shadows, crawling on the ceiling, whispering. You opened it in your mind, that's enough. I ran back in, locked the front door, and hid under the blanket like a child. The truth, I dug through public records, found old news clippings at the local library. In 1993, a girl named Eliza went missing in the building. Her father, a carpenter, sealed up a crawl space behind the bathroom wall, said he heard her voice calling from inside it for days. Police found no body, no trace. But neighbors started reporting knocking, scratching, and children's laughter. Mr. Carson had bought the building that same year. Last night, present day, I was in my new apartment. I had finally moved across town thinking I was free. But at 2:44 a.m., my phone buzzed. A notification. New device connected. Red door camera. I don't own any cameras. I rushed to the wall. My heart stopped. There it was. A small red door built into the far corner of my bedroom. It hadn't been there before. The same size, same black outline. No bolts, no locks. And underneath it, written in red marker, one final message. Now it's your turn to knock. When I moved into Crescent Hollow Apartments, I was just looking for somewhere cheap, quiet, and close to work. The building was old but solid. The rent was surprisingly low, especially for the city. Too low, actually. That should have been the first red flag. The manager, Mr. Grafton, was a quiet, older man who didn't make much conversation. But as he handed me the keys, he said something odd. You'll be on the 3rd floor. Don't wander around the 5th, especially near 5B. It's sealed for a reason. I laughed a bit, assuming he meant renovations or something. He didn't laugh back. Unnatural silence. In my first week, I noticed something strange. The elevator never stopped at the 5th floor. Even when I pressed the button, it would skip from 4 to 6. And when I tried the stairs, the door to the 5th floor was always locked from the inside, as if it didn't want to let anyone in or out. One night, I was taking laundry up and had to use the stairs because the elevator was under repair. On the 4th floor, I heard something echoing from above, a child's laughter. Then a soft knock, not from a door, but from the ceiling above me. First encounter. On a rainy Thursday night, the power briefly went out. I lit a candle and was just about to read when I heard something through the air vent. Mommy says the bad man's still here. I froze. I lived alone. No kids, no neighbors on either side that night. I leaned closer to the nothing, just silence now. But as I pulled away, I swear I heard a whisper right next to my ear. Help us. The next day I confronted Mr. Grafton. He didn't deny it. They never found the bodies, just blood and a message carved into the walls of 5B. I asked him what it said. He didn't answer. Deeper into the mystery, curiosity overtook fear. I started researching the building. Turns out apartment 5B had a dark history. In 1977, a man named Edgar Harlan moved in with his wife and young son. He was reportedly a kind man, until one night something changed. Neighbors reported hearing loud chanting, strange animal-like growls and banging that went on for hours. When police entered the apartment the next day, they found nothing. No bodies. No signs of struggle. But the walls were covered in handprints, all child-sized, and carved into the bedroom door were the words, "We never left." After that, no one stayed in 5B for long. The few who did were either driven mad or disappeared. I enter 5B. One night, I noticed something strange in the hallway. The elevator stopped and its door opened on the 5th floor. No one inside. I couldn't help myself. I stepped out. The hallway was freezing. The air smelled like mildew and old wood. 5B was at the end of the hall, its door slightly ajar. My hands shook as I pushed it open. The apartment looked like a time capsule from the 70s. Dust-covered furniture, toys on the floor, mold creeping up the walls, and on the far wall, written in something dark and flaking, "You hear us now." Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. The voices returned, the lights flickered, then came the voices, whispering, overlapping, some crying, others screaming. "He fed us fear. Don't go. He still lives here. He needs someone new." I stumbled backward and fell, landing hard on the old carpet. Then I saw him, a tall, thin figure in the hallway, face hidden in shadow, eyes glowing faintly red. Behind him, dozens of small hands reached out of the walls, grasping, writhing. I blacked out. Aftermath. When I woke up, I was lying in my own bed. Had I dreamed it? But my shoes were covered in dust, and carved into my apartment wall, behind the frame I had hung only yesterday, were the same words: "You hear us now." I moved out the next morning. Epilogue: a new home. It's been months. I'm in a new building now. Clean, bright, modern. But last night, at exactly 3:50, turned on by itself. The screen was static, but through the white noise, I heard a familiar whisper. "You came back, you never leave." And outside my window, a flickering light from the 5th floor of my old building, the one that shouldn't be there. Whispers beneath the lake. I never believed in family curses until I inherited the lake house. It had belonged to my great-uncle Thomas, a man the family avoided talking about. I only remembered him vaguely from one strange visit when I was a child, the smell of damp wood, a constant sense of being watched, and his warning: never go near the water at night. When he passed away, I was shocked to find my name in his will. No one else wanted the house. Maybe no one else dared. Grayson Lake was beautiful by day, peaceful, still, reflective like a sheet of dark glass, but the locals refused to swim there. They called it the bottomless mirror. The house stood alone on a small peninsula, surrounded on 3 sides by water. No internet, no cell signal, just me and the silence. The house with a secret. The house smelled of mildew and old secrets. It was filled with relics from another era. Candle holders, rusted lanterns, handmade wooden furniture, and portraits with cracked faces. Everything looked untouched since the 60s. But the one thing that unsettled me most was the trapdoor in the living room. Heavy, iron-bound, and chained shut. Not just locked, sealed. Carved into the wood around the trapdoor were strange symbols, like runes. They looked burned in, uneven, as if someone had scratched them by hand over years. When I called the town locksmith to inspect it, he stared for a long time, then said, "I don't work on that house." He left without another word. The first night. That night, I lay on the old sofa near the fireplace. Just as I started to doze off, I heard it. Soft gurgling, like water being poured slowly under the floor. Then came the whisper, "Daniel." I froze. I thought I was imagining it. I turned up the radio and ignored it, but the voice came again. Louder, closer. "Daniel, come down. I have something for you." The journal in the attic. The next day, I explored the attic and found a rotting trunk filled with old journals. One of them was Thomas's, thick, moldy, and nearly unreadable, but the last few entries were intact. It speaks when the moon is high. It knows your name when you enter the house. The door keeps it from rising. If it opens again, it will walk the land in flesh. There was a drawing, too. A man standing on the dock, a shadow rising from the water behind him, made entirely of faces, all screaming. The night of the full moon. That night was different. The moon was huge, a red swollen disk hanging over the lake. Around midnight, the whispers grew stronger. They weren't just below the floor now, they were in the walls. The windows fogged up from the inside, and then the trapdoor shuddered. The chains pulled tight and began to rattle like someone was tugging from below. I tried to hold the trapdoor down with a chair, but it slid across the floor on its own. The wood creaked, bent, and split. I fell back, and then it stopped. I ran outside to the dock. There, at the edge of the glowing water, stood that same figure I remembered from childhood. Tall, thin, weeds dripping from its arms, no face, just a gaping black mouth. But now it was closer. "You're the last," it whispered. Then I saw them. In the lake, dozens of pale faces just beneath the surface, staring up at me with open mouths and lifeless eyes. One face was Uncle Thomas. Possession. The next morning I woke up soaked, lying in the grass, my hands muddy, my feet scratched. Inside the house, the trapdoor was open. No chains, no symbols, just stairs going down into black water. I never remembered opening it, but I dreamt of it that night. In the dream, I stood at the top of the stairs and voices called up to me, "Welcome back." Now I don't live there anymore. But the lake isn't done with me. In my new apartment, I still hear the whispers at night, when the faucet drips or when I walk past a puddle. Once I found my bathtub filled to the brim. No one had run it. The mirror above the sink was fogged, and written in the steam was, "Let us finish the circle." I drained the tub, but I felt something move under the water, like fingers brushing against mine. The lake is in me now, and the door, wherever I go, always finds me again. The voice behind the wall. I've always lived alone, not because I preferred solitude, but because I couldn't afford roommates. I was working night shifts, barely making enough to cover rent, so when I found a dirt cheap apartment on the edge of town, I didn't hesitate. The place was old, sure, 1950s build, fading wallpaper, and a smell of mildew in the halls, but it was mine. I moved in on a cold Sunday night. The previous tenant had left in a hurry. The landlord didn't explain much, just said she'd skipped town. Her furniture was gone, but oddly there were still items left behind. A child's drawing wedged behind the fridge, a cracked mirror in the closet, a doll's head in the back of a kitchen drawer. I should have taken those as red flags, but I didn't the first voice. The second night it began. I was lying in bed half asleep when I heard it, a faint voice coming from behind the wall. "Please help me." I froze. It was a woman's voice, weak like someone crying out from inside the drywall. I sat up, heart racing, pressed my ear against the wall. Nothing. I told myself it was a neighbor, maybe the sound bouncing strangely. But the next night, it happened again. Louder, more distinct. "Please, he's still here." I didn't sleep at all. I tried recording it, but the voice never came when the mic was on. It only spoke when I was alone, in the dark, half asleep, and always from the same spot on the wall, right behind my bed. Within a week, I stopped going to work. I stayed up every night, waiting to hear her. I asked the landlord about the unit next door. He told me it was vacant, had been for months. I started tapping back. At first, one knock, then three. One night, after I tapped, the voice responded. 3 knocks. I backed away from the wall, breath shallow. Was it a person, a recording, a prank, or something else? I called my friend Sarah and begged her to spend the night. She came, reluctantly, and brought sage and candles. She believed in spirits. I didn't, not yet. At 1:43 a.m., we both heard it. "Please," under the floor. Sarah turned to me, eyes wide. "We have to get out," she whispered. But I didn't. I needed to know. The next morning, I ripped up the old carpet. Beneath the boards, I found a patch of wood stained darker than the rest. I pried it open. That's when I found the skeleton, small, fragile, curled into a fetal position, a child. The police came. Forensics confirmed it was a little girl, maybe 6 years old, buried decades ago. No ID, no missing person report matched. They told me she was likely murdered and hidden beneath the floor, and the previous tenants might never have known. I moved into a motel while they investigated. I thought the nightmare was over, but 2 nights into the motel stay, I heard it again. Not the girl, someone else, a deeper voice. "You shouldn't have found her." My lights flickered. The air turned ice cold, and I saw something in the mirror, a tall shadow standing behind me. I turned, no one there. That night, I dreamed of walls bleeding, of small hands grabbing mine from underground, of someone watching me sleep. The history. I went back to the building's records. I dug through archives, newspaper clippings, public records. I found something. In 1976, a man named Howard Ellis lived in that apartment, a janitor at a local school, single, quiet, but neighbors said they often heard cries from his apartment, a little girl's voice. He vanished in 1981. No one looked into it. Some believed he kidnapped a child. Others believed he brought his own daughter and hid her there after losing custody. No one knows for sure, but the building gained a reputation. Tenants left quickly, complained of voices, of cold spots, of bad dreams, but no one ever found her. Until me, the last night. Back in the apartment for one final visit, I planned to cleanse the space. I brought a priest, candles, and holy water. At 3:12 a.m., the fire alarm went off on its own. Smoke filled the hallway, but there was no fire. We opened the door, and the shadow was there again. This time it moved. It whispered in a guttural tone, "She was mine." The priest collapsed, his nose bleeding. The candles all blew out at once. I left, for good. Aftermath. I moved 3 times since then. New cities, new jobs. But no matter where I go, I still hear knocking. 3 soft taps on my wall. Sometimes the girl's voice returns, crying. Sometimes it's his. And sometimes I wake up to find a new drawing under my bed. Always of a wall, and always with the words, "Still here." The room with no door. It had been exactly 1 year since I moved to that crumbling old apartment building on the outskirts of town. Rent was dirt cheap. The neighbors kept to themselves, and the place had a quiet, almost forgotten air about it, which at the time I thought was a good thing. But there was something off from the beginning. The hallway leading to my unit was too long for the building's exterior. When I walked to my door, it always felt like I was passing an invisible space, a chunk of the building that shouldn't exist. I chalked it up to the strange layout and didn't think much more of it. Not until I started hearing the noises. It started around the 3rd night. Just a soft tapping, like knuckles on drywall, coming from the space between my bedroom and the kitchen. The first time I heard it, I froze. It was 2:43 a.m. I remember exactly because I just looked at the clock. I held my breath and listened. 1, 2, 3 soft taps, then silence. Over the next few nights, the sound returned. Same time, same spot. I tried knocking back once out of curiosity. Nothing happened at first, but then the next night, after the usual 3 taps, it answered. 1 knock, slow, measured. That's when I checked the floor plan. There shouldn't have been any room between the bedroom and the kitchen. It was just a wall, no closet, no hidden passage. But the knocking kept coming, and then came the voice. It was a whisper, almost childlike, but hoarse and dry, like someone who hadn't had water in days. I heard it say, "Please, let me out." I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I started tapping around the wall. One section sounded different, hollow. My fingers tingled when I touched it, like static shock. I pushed against it. Nothing gave way. It was solid. But I could feel something behind it, like the air shifted colder in that one spot. By the end of the week, I couldn't take it anymore. I borrowed a sledgehammer from a coworker, came home, and started breaking through the wall. The dust made me cough, and the deeper I dug, the colder the air became. That's when I found it. A door. A perfectly intact wooden door built into the wall, with no frame, no handle, no hinges. Just a slab of wood sealed into the space like it had always been there. The surface was covered in old childlike carvings, stick figures, a crying face, and in the center, a single word etched over and over again, "Mine." I stared at it for a long time, waiting for something. I didn't know what. And then the door opened. Not all the way, just a crack, but enough for the air to rush past me like a breath. I peered in. There was no light, just a mirror standing in the center of a tiny, windowless room. I stepped inside. My feet felt numb against the old wooden floor. The mirror reflected the room, but not me. Instead, I saw a child, thin, pale, with empty black eyes. She was standing behind me. I spun around, nothing there. But the mirror still showed her, closer now, reaching out toward my back. I ran. I don't remember how I got out. The next thing I knew, I was on my bedroom floor, the wall completely sealed again. No hole, no dust, no door, but the mirror was in my living room. It hadn't been there before. Now every night at 2:43 I hear the knocking again. 3 soft taps from behind the wall. And when I look in the mirror, she's still there. But she's not alone anymore. There's something taller behind her. And last night, I swear they both smiled.